Let's have a look at the story around Candace Owens, and this does have a New Zealand component to it, because we're going to have a look at what happened today with the Young Labour Party. Young Labour President Ethan Ryle disagreed with a statement from the Free Speech Union and called on the coalition government to deny Candace Owens entry into New Zealand. Her views are not merely just controversial, but they're dangerous. So we do have an obligation by protecting our communities from that kind of rhetoric that empowers divisive movements. So it is our view that allowing her a platform would fail to uphold core values. Like we saw from the visit of Posey Parker at the end of last year, it does increase tensions in our communities, and that particularly offers a wider platform for those that have similar views. He said if the government chose not to ban Owens from New Zealand, the government should ensure higher security protocols in place at Owens's events to ensure that when those people do choose to counter-protest her, they are also not met with violence. We struggle a bit. We're very honest here on this show. If you're just new to us, we struggle a bit with that counter protesters aren't the recipients of violence, because it's pretty clear that at the Posey Parker situation, there was revolting rhetoric, but there were one or two of the violent acts seems to come from the counter protesters, and we do and still would call out, for example, the elderly woman who was punched in the face, that sort of thing. So point taken, there should be no violence from either sides, but you can't really draw Posey Parker into it and then talk about Posey Parker's side, committing violence for that example. Perhaps if you were at the Melbourne rally with Posey Parker, now she denounced the Nazis, Chewie again, that were there, but they were there to support her message, and they were violent. So, so point taken overall, just I don't know if the Posey Parker or Albert Parker is the best one to use as an example. So why is this conversation going around Candace Owens? And it's because she has been banned from Australian failure.
You're trending Australia. You're banned from Australia. Your visa's being banned. Do you want to comment? I mean, literally, it was unbelievable.
Before I play this, Chewie, if you were to kind of nutshell your understanding as to why she was banned, like what we've heard in the media, because she says something here that sounds a bit different. Why would you think that she's banned?
Look, I'm not going to try and quote it because I don't have it to hand, but no. My understanding was that they banned her because of there would be essentially a negative effect on social cohesion. Yeah,
and they used examples like anti-Semitism was one of the words they used. Now, I want you, this is not standing up for Candace Owens, obviously, but have a listen to what she says she was banned for, and it might surprise you from her perspective what she thinks she was banned for, Chewie, because what she's going to say she was banned for is sort of something from our side. Have a listen.
What you are seeing really take shape is that people don't want me to get in front of an audience, and the audience understands.
That might be true. Fair enough.
And what the reason is. We all know what actually happened in Australia. What happened in Australia is really kind of has been in the story of this year, this year, which is that I am not comfortable with the amount of death that is taking place in Palestine.
So she thinks that she's been banned because she's pro-Palestinian. Now, but Chewie, this is where this thing becomes insidious. Many of us who have been pro-peace in the Middle East, pro-innocent victims in Palestine, have been labelled anti-Semitic, right? That has happened to most people who have said that. Now, what she's doing is she's saying, because I'm pro-Palestinian, they're calling me anti-Semitic. Now, there's a few other things that people could probably point to about anti-Semitism, but she's almost using the position of those on the left that get called something for standing up for the civilians in Gaza. I just thought it was interesting when I heard it. This is a short, so there's only 30 seconds. We'll get to the end of it.
I've made my bed. I've chosen to lie in it. Okay, Candace, you're going to lose your job. Okay, check. I accept that. Oh, we'll take away your YouTube channel. They did that. The Zionist group or whatever it was called on X said, let's lead the charge and mass report and get her demonetized on YouTube. I said, okay. I accept that because, once again, I'm not a person who can be bought for money. I said what I said, and I said it 10 toes down. I am not comfortable with the amount of death that is in Gaza.
So, people in the chat, she has a point. Yeah, we know she's got a fucking point. We've been saying this for over a year about the death in Gaza. But is she cosplaying that now with an underlying vibe of. So is she basically pro Palestine because she wants nothing
No.
but bad things to happen to Israel? You know, so is that a position of the anti-Semitic? Is they want Hamas, and we don't want Hamas, but they want Hamas to win, or they want the Palestinian cause to be taken over by them so they can make it look like they're mainstreamed.
Yeah, it's her hatred for Jews ultimately is driving her position. It is consistent throughout her statements. It is overriding everything, and she sees an opportunity to use Gaza to point at the Jewish people and go, see, they're all monsters. Now, even me, as fervent as I am about what an absolute goddamn stain on the planet Israel's actions towards Gaza are, I do not ascribe that to the entire Jewish faith.
Of course.
Of Jewish people. I ascribe it completely to the leadership of Israel and the fact that it's Zionism.
Okay, hang on, can we just make this clear? I don't think we ascribe it to any part of the Jewish faith. Like you said, every part of it's like to no part of the Jewish faith. This is from Israelis, the Israeli government, and the Israeli Defense Force. There's actually no part of
religious
the Jewish religion.
Exactly what we were talking about.
Yeah, no part of it. And the word I wrote down, which I was trying to find about with Candace Owens, she's co-opting. She's co-opting the cause for peace in the Middle East, and she's co-opting the cause of, you know, how dare they be? It's like 50,000 civilians now, but she's co-opting it for nefarious reasons. That's what it feels like. And just so you're clear, the Australian Immigration Minister Tony Burke said the country's national interest would be best served with Owens somewhere else, as she could, quote, incite discord in almost every direction. That was from the Australian government. Go, Joey.
Yeah, and they also list from downplaying the impact of the Holocaust with comments about Nazi Dr. Joseph Mengele to claims that Muslims started slavery. Candace Owens has the capacity to incite discord in almost every direction.
Yeah.
So that's why they denied it. And that's fair enough. And I'm sitting here going, where the fuck is our immigration minister? Where's he at? This should have been a lockstep decision with Australia. Our two countries should have been talking about this, as my point of view. She's a horrible, hateful person. I don't know who is bringing her here. Like, what possible... Is it the Free Speech Union? I don't know. But there is zero good coming from her being here.
It's interesting, because there is no such thing as absolute free speech. There are tethers to free speech, even if it's the most clear one, which is if it's inciting violence. That's a tether to free speech. You got that? So there's no such thing as absolute free speech. People always use the example of shouting fire in a theater, threatening to kill a world leader. There are tethers to it, right? And understanding that there's tethers to it, what the argument about is from people like the Free Speech Union and others is, where do you put that tether, right? Where do you put it? Do you put it at has to lead to an exact act of violence, or could it incite secondhand an act of violence? Where do you put it? I'm someone who leans towards more speech rather than less. I'm not someone who likes to suppress speech, but I think every single example, every single chance you get a chance to investigate, will this be a net positive or a net negative? Could this lead to a second stage level of disharmony or violence? That's when you need to look at it as a one-off. And I think, Joey, you're right. I think New Zealand and Australia should get together on these sorts of things. And you just said lockstep, should actually be able to figure these things out together, because we are often tagged on to these kinds of tours, whether it's a band or whether it's a speaker, because it takes a lot to get to Australia.
Economical.
It takes basically getting to Australia is hard. Getting to New Zealand is easier than getting to Perth. So it makes sense.
I think that one of the things that happens, and I'm glad you brought up music, because this is the same sort of thing. When these guys get cancelled and can't come into Australia, you often see the New Zealand leg or appearance cancelled for mysterious reasons. Hopefully that'll be the thing. That she doesn't see the value in coming here.
This does lead on because some people will talk about suppression of speech, free speech. What is free speech? It does actually relate very closely to other things going on in New Zealand at the moment. So Christopher Luxon, our hairless leader, came out, I think today or yesterday, saying that he would consider banning, I think, the salute, the Sig Heil salute, and perhaps even Nazi memorabilia. And he's got a bit of a fight on his hands from someone who, love him or hate him, at least he's fucking consistent for most things other than gang patches. And that's David Seymour, who was like, no, we shouldn't ban that.
No mai, haere mai. Welcome to 3 News. ACT Party leader David Seymour says there's no need for a ban on swastikas because the symbols most New Zealanders are really intimidated by are gang patches. That's despite the Prime Minister telling 3 News yesterday he was open to...
Because you probably weren't aware, Chewy, the mongrel mob have caused far, far more harm over the last 100 years than any kind of Nazi. You know, what have the Nazis really done compared to the mongrel mob? The mongrel mob, they're the real danger. The real danger indeed.
Ban on Nazi symbols and salutes. Here's senior political correspondent Jenna Lynch.
The mongrel mob has many a cry, including a phrase adopted and adapted from Nazi Germany. Gang members are facing down the gang patch ban, which comes into force in 3 weeks.
That's been more around intimidation.
But David Seymour argues there's no such intimidation when it comes to Nazi slogans and symbols.
Most people would say that anyone with any vague knowledge of history is just a complete idiot.
So what he's saying is the mongrel mob can take their mongrel mob patch off and put on a swastika and it won't be intimidating at all. That's literally what he's saying. Unstitch the mongrel mob patch, put on a swastika, walk around the streets of whatever town or city they live in, shouting Sig Heil at people, and that won't be intimidating at all. This is the actual argument that this man is making.
It's one of those symbols, and so I think there's a difference there. Whereas people are genuinely intimidated by seeing certain gang patches and symbols.
Swastikas and the term Sig Heil have been used by the mongrel mob for decades, though gang leaders had said the use of the term would be dumped following the March 15 terror attacks.
Oh my gosh, not like a gang being community orientated. Imagine that, Chewy. That can't happen. Some compassion there from a gang, surely not.
The symbolism has also been propagated by far-right white supremacist groups across the world. It led to a public ban of Nazi symbolism in Australia.
And they're not intimidating at all, are they, Chewy? Those far-right Nazi groups around Christchurch and other parts of New Zealand.
This year, something the Prime Minister told 3 News he's open to following mongrel mob members chanting it at a tangi yesterday.
It's something we considered here because there was a lot of that going on within the session today.
Yeah, well, we're up for those conversations.
David Seymour disagrees.
Well, my view is I hate those symbols and salutes, but I quite like knowing who the idiots in society are. And if they're prepared to self-identify like that, I think that's actually helpful to everyone.
Okay. Do we really need to show them what comes next? The next question. Self-identifying more. You mean like if a gang member was wearing a patch, you like, honestly, the argument he just made, look, here's 2 things. The argument he just made for keeping people wearing Nazi symbols is the same argument that lots of people talk about for wearing gang patches. And let me say one more thing that I've just thought of, Chewy. In New Zealand, when white people use Nazi symbology and slogans, no problems as well. But when the brown people start to, I'll use that word again, co-opt it, all of a sudden Luxon's getting on his high horse going, well, the mongrel mob are doing it now, so maybe we should think about banning it. Why didn't he think about banning it when all those white people were using it in their far-right groups? It just seems a little bit coincidental to me. This has got about 15 seconds. I'll play it again, then I'll shut up and you can unleash.
He's also questioning the need.
What do you achieve? I mean, you talk about a tiny minority of incredibly stupid people. If they're prepared to self-identify...
That's been our
And
argument.
practicality.
I think you'd probably run into all sorts of Bill of Rights issues.
Bill of Rights issues the government had no problem legislating over for its ban on gang patches.
Exactly, Gina.
Thank you.
There you go, Chewy. I'm out,
Gina.
you're in.
What an absolute twat. First of all, I'm going to talk a little bit about why the mongrel mob used Nazi imagery and shout "Sieg fucking Heil" and all of that sort of stuff. When these gangs came around, the authority figures that they were butting into were people that had gone and fought the Nazis in Europe. And they were cast out of society to become outlaws. And the most offensive thing that they thought they could show to these authority figures is an utter disrespect of what they went and fought and died for. So that's why they co-opted the swastika and Sieg fucking Heil. You need to understand these things to try and combat them. Does Luxon understand that? Clearly no. Does Seymour understand that? I don't think so. For all of his talking about understanding history, the man clearly doesn't. And I love how his argument for not banning the swastika, for some reason, ran head fucking first into the asshole of the defense for getting rid of gang patches. Like, you couldn't hold a coherent position on that. Like, I'm personally of the view the only place in New Zealand for the swastika is in museums pointing out that the Nazis were bad. Let's not fucking do this again. The only realistic reason for owning a swastika for anyone is that it was captured from its previous owner in battle. I'd be fine if we ban the swastika, like some Australian states have done. Our society is not worse off. But will the mongrel mob give a shit? No, because famously, that's what outlaw gangs are about. Not giving a shit what you think. And you're quite right, Pat. Maybe they'll go, they've banned one of our symbols. We'll just use a different one. The intimidation is not the symbol.
Mm.
It's the organization or the person wearing it. Like, if the mongrel mob decided tomorrow to adopt the symbol of Winnie the fucking Pooh and have that all over their gear and tattooed on their faces and still carry on doing the same shit that the mongrel mob does, guess what? Winnie the Pooh is now intimidating.
Yeah.
Like, these guys do not understand that. Ban the swastika because there is absolutely no positive effect for having the swastika in our society for any reason apart from being in a fucking museum or a history book. That's it.
Very good.
Why is Seymour defending the right for anyone to run a swastika up a flagpole? That seems to be his position. Is it a friend of his? A donor really likes doing it on weekends? Who the fuck knows? But he can't hold a consistent position. He wants to be. It's always this. He tries to be a libertarian, but he also tries to be a right-wing reactionary where the answer is to ban everything. And he can't stay in one lane.